Mr. Sriram.
Mr. Sriram. You're not audible, Mr. Sriram.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, is it audible now?
Very clear.
Oh, very good. Okay. With the Vinod, can we start?
Yes, Mr. Sriram, we can please.
Okay. Okay, so very good morning to all of you who have joined this session. On behalf of Southern India Chamber of Commerce, I extend a hearty welcome to one and all. I am Sriram Balakrishnan, Chairman GST Task Force, Southern India Chambers, and I will be conducting the proceedings of this session. I would like to request all of you to put on mute unless you are speaking. Firstly, I would like to thank the President of Southern India Chamber of Commerce, Chennai, in agreeing to grace the occasion and provide his perspective, and Mr. Prakash Kumar, CEO GSTN, and other officials, including Mr. Bhatt from NIC, both from GSTN and NIC, for agreeing to participate and do the presentation.
North Commissioner, Mr. B. Sriram, partner, Ernst & Young, as well as important of our GST Council. Special invitee to today's program, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to each of you. I'm glad that we have the presence of each of you for today's important discussion. Mr. Prakash Kumar, I'm glad that we are touching base during the initial program on GST, when GST first came about, and we shared the stage together. Glad to have you with us. Ladies and gentlemen, the Goods and Services Act was introduced with effect from the 1st of July 2020. Total reform in tax regime since our independence. Policy aimed to streamline
sir, your voice is very low, sir.
In our country
Or
by
message
doing away with
sir.
multiple taxes and cessils levied by the various state and central government. By introducing a unified tax system,
No, sir.
nearly all English tax laws. Despite increasing issues, GST as expected is gradually stabilizing.
Sir, our voice சரியாவே கேட்கல. அவர் கொஞ்சம் பேக்ல போய் நின்னு பேச சொல்லுங்க. மெசேஜ்
The
ஒன்னு
GST Council has gradually started making new and appropriate changes in the GST regime.
இல்ல சார், அவரது சரியா வாய்ஸ் கேட்கல.
Listening to all stakeholders in time and also correcting procedural related aspects. The GST Council has been very responsive to the requirements of the industry as well as state from time to time and has sustained some compliance requirements on the part of taxpayers. The GST Council, with the view to curb anti-evasion measures, had decided to implement the E-Invoicing,
இல்ல தெரியாது.
in which
அதுல தெரியாது
invoices are authenticated electronically by GSTN on their common portal called Invoice Registration Portal, or IRP for short, which is in turn managed by the GSTN itself. E-invoicing is slated to be effective from the 1st of October, as Mr. Sriram has also mentioned, for all taxpayers having turnover of over 500 crore rupees. Further, SEZ units have been
ஸ்ரீராமுக்கு தெரியுமே சார், அவருக்கும் கோவாஸ் கொடுத்துருக்கு. அவருக்கெல்லாம் தெரியாது. அவருக்கு எது கொடுக்கணும்? அவருக்கே கொடுக்கலாம் பிரசன்டேஷன்.
indirect tax credit, sorry. ITC, tracking of invoices, through automation of tax return filing process, and lesser possibility of audit surveys by the tax authorities. The information is available on inspection level. Thus, implementation of e-invoices has a lot of benefits in the system and changes suggested to all taxpayers. The main intention behind today's
Mr. Arun, just 1 minute. May I request all the participants to kindly mute your microphone? There is too much of background noise. We are not able to hear Mr. Arun.
Yeah,
Mute. And the host, I will request the host to kindly mute everyone.
yes, yes, please. I have muted everyone. Mr. Arun, you can unmute.
Mr. Arun, you're on mute.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
The main intention behind today's session is to throw light on the concept and changes that have been taking place, as well as to throw light on the transition from the current system of issuing invoices to the new e-invoicing mechanism. Recently, GSTN was described by Mr. Nandan Nilekani as India's most radical force for India's tax reform. Mr. Prakash Kumar, the CEO of GSTN, we are very glad that he has chosen to invest his time with us to help us understand the updations in the new system. We welcome Mr. Prakash Kumar and his team to this interaction session. I welcome Mr. John Kennedy, IRS Commissioner GST, who readily accepted our request and has agreed to join us. I welcome all members who have connected through our online platform, and I wish you a wonderful learning experience today. Thank you.
Can I now request Mr. J.M. Kennedy, Commissioner, to do his inaugural address, please, and share your thoughts on
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sriram. Good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, please.
Because we are not, very much used to video conference, but now, of course, due to COVID, we are getting used to. Southern India Chamber is one of the, very old chambers in Chennai, beginning in the year 1909, and we are almost now past 100 years. And it's doing a wonderful work in making bridges between the policy and the industry, so business and industry. Here, President of the South India Chamber is here, Mr. R.M. Arun. Good morning, sir, and I welcome all the participants today, particularly Prakash Kumar sir is here, CEO of GSTN 1975 batch IAS officer. He is here, and under his leadership, GSTN is doing a wonderful work. They are doing, they are breaking all shackles and obstacles, and they are constantly marching towards excellence. That is something which is really heartening, glad, and we should all celebrate and appreciate that. Take, for example, India is simply too big and huge. Many of us, we do not recognize, or we put it, we don't claim like that. See, take for example, 1.26 crore GST registrants as on date. You have 51 crore returns have been filed so far. 138 crore e-way bills have been generated from the system. About 15 crore total payment transactions have been in the GST network. And if you see, highest number of payment transactions in a day is about 24 lakh. So 24 lakh people could file return on a day, and around 10 lakh payment transactions were done in a day, highest. So it is, GSTN is, very huge infrastructure backbone, and they have been marching towards excellence one after another. Now, coming to the theme of the day, it is the next big step we are taking in ease of doing business. It's a very big step we are taking. Around 120 countries in the world have adopted e-invoice already. Around another 60 countries, they are contemplating. Of course, they are in various stages, and there are a lot of debates going on, intellectual debates. Around 120 countries have accepted e-invoicing as something very important for a GST system. So India will be one of them to get into e-invoicing starting from the 1st of October. So very big historic step for us in ease of doing business. I mean, primarily if we see the e-invoicing right now is restricted to businesses with more than 500 crore turnover in a financial year. So we are talking about big businesses which are having more than 500 crore turnover. And not only that, those who are only having B2B supplies. We are looking at B2B transactions where the e-invoicing is going to apply, not to B2C, only to B2B transactions. Even among the companies which are having more than 500 crore turnover, in all B2B transactions, your invoices will be e-invoice. And very importantly, if you see, the e-invoice is not generation of invoice from the portal. You are generating invoice as you do normally. As you do every day, you do an invoice. Only thing is, the invoice particulars are transmitted to the portal, the invoice portal. Roughly around a dozen portals have been created for the purpose. And GSTN have been continuously doing testing of these portals since January. And they are upgrading, resolving technical glitches. And they have been doing a wonderful work since January. And it was also in the public domain that you can do a testing of your own. You can upload some invoices and see. That started in January for 500 crore turnover, then 100 crore turnover. It was brought sometime in February. So consistently, the theme is in the public domain. So in 2019, September, GST Council proposed this idea of e-invoicing, but from there we have developed a lot, and GSTN has been consistently working on that. Even now, you see in the web, they have created a number of videos. In fact, their videos are available in the YouTube channels. So you can watch them, and they have published very elaborate FAQs. So FAQ is covering every aspect of the e-invoicing. So e-invoicing, as I said, is a wonderful way of creating ease of doing business in the country. So this is a big step which we are taking. And as I said, it is only for B2B invoices right in the beginning. And what are the three things which you are going to get when you transmit your normal invoice data? As you do normally, you generate invoice every day. But when you transmit it using a JSON file of certain fields, you are going back and you are going to get IRN, which is the most important thing. That is the invoice reference number. You are going to get the IRN. The IRN plus QR code you are going to get. And this QR code is the most important aspect of the e-invoicing. The QR code is having around 8 parameters. So simply using the app, if you read the QR code, it will give you 8 parameters. And one of the 8 parameters is the IRN number itself. That is the invoice reference number. So every invoice is going to have an IRN. That is the most important part of the e-invoicing. So the system gives you the returns in the JSON file. It signs with the digital signature, and it is giving you QR code and the IRN. Now, the most important part, why this is called as ease of doing business, is that it avoids, first of all, multiple entries. So how many places you type the invoice number? So hereafter, you simply read the QR code, the invoice details are there. So you don't have to type your invoice numbers every time. Supposing that you do every time, there are a number of errors, transcription errors keep coming. And now these transcription errors can be avoided in the e-invoicing. So once you have done it, once the invoice details are transmitted to the portal, and from the portal an IRN is generated with QR code and the digital signature, and the system automatically, the portal returns you that, again using the JSON file, then it is easy for you that you need not do multiple entries. Even e-way bills can get generated automatically. Again, you do not type the invoice number or particulars for it. The QR code simply you can read, and the details are populated. And it is very easy for you. You can compare with your purchase orders at the end of the day or at the end of the month, because you have already transmitted the invoice numbers. So this is one of the very important steps which we are taking for ease of doing business. And such a wonderful medium is coming into effect from October 1st. Around a dozen portals have been already created and tested by the GSTN. And Mr. Prakash Kumar, CEO, GSTN, is with us today, with us, and is for at this time when hardly around 10 days are left. This time is very precious for them, and at this time he has, been willing, and he has taken time to join with all of us, particularly through the South India Chamber. So that is something which is remarkable. I thank Prakash Kumar sir, CEO GSTN, for coming for this video conference with his team, and he is going to explain to us the various features of the new e-invoicing system, and I'm sure they're going to go in depth. And on our side also, I think the business and industry should take initiative. A welter of material is available in the public domain. FAQs are available. They have made beautiful videos. I request every one of you to please familiarize yourself so that we can make the e-invoicing successful. That is very, very important. And I'm sure the members of the South India Chamber always have stood at the forefront in making the government policy successful. I'm sure you will be able to do that. And it is ease of doing business. It is in your own interest, so that we'll be able to do our best. And we are going to make e-invoicing successful. Thank you, and over to Prakash Kumar sir for making his team for making the presentation. And at the end, there will be a question-answer session so that everybody can pose your questions and take clarifications. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Really succinctly, you have put the advantages of the e-invoicing system, and you have very beautifully explained how the two key important networks, GSTN and NIC, have successfully implemented the GST in the country and also the e-way bill system in the country. Before I hand over the proceedings to Mr. Prakash Kumar, I would like to, for a matter of 5-10 minutes, talk about few aspects, legal aspects relating to e-invoicing, and also talk about how businesses are preparing for e-invoicing, and a few open issues which we have shared with Mr. Prakash Kumar and others, which will be taken up at the end of the session. But before that, I would like to briefly touch upon few aspects. So I just wanted to say that e-invoicing, of course, is going to be effective from 1st October 2020 in the country. And it is applicable, as Mr. Kennedy said, to start with for companies having 500 crore and above turnover, and only with regard to the supplies made in the course of B2B transactions. With the introduction of e-invoicing, businesses shall enjoy a system-driven input tax credit determination on a near real-time basis and a real-time tracking of invoices through automation of tax return filing process, and of course thereby bringing down the complaints burden of the taxpayers as the information is captured at the transaction level. So while it is expected to result in a huge advantage to both the revenue as well as to the taxpayer, of course there are few areas as a starting point which requires furthermore clarification, both from the legal and the systems point of view. I will quickly touch upon them. Today, as a legal background to GST invoicing, we have few sections and rules in the CGST law. Section 31 talks about GST invoice read with rule 46, 47 and 48. And there are other provisions for issuing bill of supplies in the case of exempt as well as B2C supplies. So here e-invoicing is more concerned with the provisions relating to GST invoicing rather than the provisions relating to bill of supplies, to start with at least, because bill of supplies talks about both the exempt and the B2C transactions as well. Rule 46 lays down the contents of the GST invoice. Today, the GST invoice for the last 2.5 years, which the businesses have been using, contains about 22 data fields, and this is a standard which has been laid out in GST law today. Going forward, for eligible taxpayers crossing the 500 crore threshold limit, as well as conducting the B2B transactions, other than the excluded categories, namely the SEZ units, the taxable service providers of GTA, Goods Transport Agency, banks, NBFCs, insurance companies, passenger transportation services, issuing tickets to the passengers, and multiplexes providing admission and exhibition services of cinematograph film. These 4-5 categories are excluded. Barring these 4-5 categories, others are covered if they are providing B2B transactions for raising the E-Invoicing and obtaining IRN number from the IRP portal. So if any GST invoice is issued post 1st October 2020 without an IRN, that GST invoice is an invalid invoice. The aforesaid requirements are being brought as an amendment to Rule 48.4, Rule 48.5, read with Rule 54.2, 3, 4 and 4.8 of CGST rules. Even today, there are few areas on the coverage which requires clarification, sir. Namely, we have said 500 crore pertaining to the financial year as is mentioned in notification number 13/2020 dated 21st March 2020. Financial year 1920, or is it any of the last of 3 financial years starting from 17-18 is something which needs a clarification. Of course, one of the FAQ did mention that any of the 3 financial years, if a business has exited, then they can opt voluntarily to get into e-invoicing system. It is not very clear whether it is mandatory or whether it is voluntary, and which financial year 500 crore threshold needs to be tested. Assuming in the last 3 financial year 500 crore is not there, and in the current year they may exceed 500 crore, at what point in time such businesses have to get into e-invoicing is also required to be clarified. As e-invoicing requirements are brought in Rule 48 pertaining to manner of issue of invoice, applicability of e-invoicing requirement for credit note and debit note, which are governed in Rule 53, which is yet to be amended from a legal perspective. Of course, we all know that e-invoicing is applicable to invoice, debit note and credit note, but from a legal point of view, this is something which I'm sure will be fixed in the coming days. On the excluded categories again, there has been a recent FAQ saying that the excluded categories is applicable entity-wise rather than. Can I? I'll put people on mute. So on the excluded categories, while there are few clarifications are required, the recent FAQ clarifies the exclusion for the entity as a whole and not for the specific business activity or the GST registration. On this basis, the businesses are preparing on the implementation front. Lastly, on the time limit for raising the e-invoice, it has been stated that currently there are no time limit. And this is the understanding with which businesses are preparing for implementation of e-invoice. With less than 2 weeks to go, any further changes to the above understanding would make it practically difficult or delay the preparation by the businesses to comply with e-invoicing from 1st October. A typical preparation in any organization, sir, would involve changes to ERP systems and changes to several business processes, besides revisiting the customer and vendor contract terms and providing appropriate training to the users. For business to understand about e-invoicing, they need to not only understand the legal provisions, but also the schema, which is the GST Invoice 01, as well as the latest version of API, version 1.03, issued on 5th of August and subsequent enhancements. There are about 52 validation checks which are also required to be addressed. So even for organizations which have a robust ERPs and business processes, the above activities will take not less than 3 to 4 weeks for preparations. From Southern India Chamber's point of view, we have also separately given few questions and suggestions which may be considered by the GST officials for deliberation at the end of the session. With this backdrop, sir, I would like to hand over the proceedings to Mr. Prakash Kumar, CEO GSTN, and the team from GSTN as well as National Informative Center NIC to conduct the proceedings. Over to you, Mr. Prakash Kumar.
Mr. Sriram, thank you, Mr. Arun. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. and all the participants who are attending this particular webinar. I've just started sharing my desktop. I hope it is visible.
It's just coming up, sir.
Visible?
It's coming up.
I'll stop my video. Okay. Okay, so while it is coming up, let me first thank Southern India Chamber of Commerce for giving.
So right now it's showing
me.
It's showing the mails.
Oh my God! So I've already shared.
I think you've shared the screen. So it
just give me. I know, but I have changed that. So let me just. So while it's this problem is getting resolved, I wanted to thank the Southern India Chamber of Commerce for giving me, the whole team from GST and NIC, this opportunity to talk to you people. Also, I would like to thank Mr. Kennedy for his good words which he talked about GST and NIC. Thank you very much. Generally, we don't hear such words from our stakeholders. Okay, and lastly, I'm not from 75 batch, that's not that old. I'm from 85 batch. Okay, so let me try to share my screen again. I hope it has come now.
it's coming, sir.
Is it visible? Pankaj, can you confirm?
Not yet, sir. It's still dark. We got it, sir. Now it's visible.
It's visible.
Okay. Yeah. So Mr. Sriram talked about that this is a compliance measure. So I thought I'll start with this particular slide. That the intent is not compliance. Intent is to improve ease of doing business, which was also touched upon by our colleague, Mr. Kennedy. See, and he also explained that today, even if you issue invoices in electronic form, there is lots of data entry involved because our systems are different. So even if it is generated in electronic format, the schema is not same. So whatever is generated by one ERP cannot be read by other. And that leads to increased cost of invoice processing, increased cost of internal, loss of control on internal controls, and the turnaround of payment time and things of that sort. The reporting to tax department for so-called control of evasion is just a byproduct of that. And there are two models in the world which primarily people have gone for the first part, but there are many countries who have gone for the second. And now there is a convergence of both models happening. So what you see down below is there are the advantages of the invoice, which is accuracy and reconciliation, because there is no manual data entry. Whatever comes from the supplier is received by the receiver and goes into her accounting system. It also reduces cost, eliminates paper, improves internal control, and improves better capital management, and of course, better relationship between the supplier and the recipient. Now, while this was happening, I mean, the major reason was that there has to be uniform standard so that whatever is generated by one is understood by the other. And I'll just take you to this particular slide. If you recall, a few years back, when the SMS, 20 years ago or so, SMSs came, and initially everything was in English, and then we started having in Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, etc. And we used to see that whatever was sent, especially in our Indian languages, if the instruments were different, they could not be read. It used to be read as junk. So how does it happen here? You need in between people because the service providers could be different. So there is a need for standard, so that whatever is sent in one standard today, and everyone adopts that standard, so the other person also gets in the same format and interpretation is done correctly. So if I just replace the SMS and say, okay, this is the e-invoice, I am using SAP and my buyer is using Oracle, whatever I send, if it is uniform, they can interpret, that system can interpret and take into the accounting system without any challenge. So that is what the major thing behind is. And apart from that, when everyone reports to the tax department has to understand that system has to understand, unless until there is a standard, it will not happen. And this is what precisely was done by the government by announcing this schema, etc. Now, let me go to, this part was covered by Mr. Kennedy, so let me not. You can see, even in our region, South Asia, many countries have already gone ahead and they are implementing it. Now, this is a case study from France. What happened after they introduced e-invoice? If you see the cost of handling one invoice, in paper system it was 7 euros. It came down to 0.13. So the saving was 96. Number of invoices which could be handled, a paper invoice, around 6,000 invoices in a year by a FT, full-time employee. That increased to 90,000, which is 15 times efficiency and time saving. So this is, in fact, they conducted a survey, and this was done by EY. 52% businesses view cost reduction as the principal advantage of digital transformation. So then we came, your questions, lots of people asked that, how do I comply with this? So we have created an invoice registration portal set up by NIC since 6th of January this year. Now we have given opportunity to people to integrate and do the testing. So there are two models available today. Taxpayers who are now going to be mandated to provide it, upload invoice data, can do it directly. They can integrate, and let me tell you, large number of them, few thousands have already done out of 48,000. They have done integrated directly, and they have tested, they have generated IRN, they have got signed electronic invoices. Then there are many who will not do it, and they would like to avail services of GST Suvidha provider or other application service provider, or the billing and accounting software system. That also has been enabled. The third one, which I have not mentioned here, is e-commerce operator. That suggestion also came to us, that I sell through e-commerce operators as well. Can they do it on my behalf? We said yes. That also has been enabled by NIC. Now, what is the impact on taxpayers? I was told that they have to do lots of changes. See, for them, the operations remains the same. They will continue to see the same screen. They will generate the invoices the way they are generating today. The changes have been made by the ERP and billing provider. So you have to ensure that your ERP or billing provider does it. In case you have your own IT, which many large companies have, your own accounting system, then you need to do that. Then the next question was, what are the modes for uploading? So we have provided multiple modes, from API to tool-based, etc., etc. And the last part is, we are also working to put in place a mechanism to enable exchange of signed invoice which the supplier receives from IRP with the receiver. So how will it work? Basically, like you prepare on your accounting, billing, ERP, whatever software you have, and just to ensure that your billing software or your ERP has been updated so that it generates the electronic invoice in our format, the format which has been approved by the government. And we'll talk about that if we need. We can discuss a little more on that. That is then reported. Once it is reported, our system, IRP system, gives back that they do validations. I was told 40 validations. Now, validations are, what are these validations? Validations are that the GST and GST of the supplier has to be correct one. Date has to be in the range. Then other things like your taxable value multiplied by tax rate. Don't you check that? Doesn't your billing software have that? These are the basic things. When you add 10 line items, your sum should be same. Should we not check that? Now, these are some of the things so that you don't face problem. And I'm certain all ERPs, billing, accounting, billing softwares have these validations. We have not done anything extra over and above that. Initially, yes, there were some problem on rounding off that we have changed. So, in fact, we have been very responsive based on whatever problems or issues were reported by industry through various associations or directly to us. We have made, NIC has made those changes. Now, once this validation, after validation, IRN is generated, a QR code is generated, and that electronic file which came to us, we call it payload, is signed by our IRP, digitally signed, and returned back to the sender. Now that's what it shows that you have reported, and this is the digitally signed, which means verified by us, verified for its content. Now what happens? This you can, after that, you can use it to generate a PDF file if your buyer wants. If your buyer wants the signed JSON, you can give signed JSON. If your buyer wants a printed invoice, you can print it. Thereafter, it is between you and your buyer. How and in what format you are going to send it. As I mentioned earlier, we are also working to put in a mechanism like the emails go from, suppose I am on Gmail and you are on Yahoo. How does it go? So that same kind of thing we are working on so that we can provide that mechanism as well, that after you have received signed invoice, you can say send to my recipient and it goes there. Now then what do we do with the invoice information which has come to us? What we do is to use that to populate your GSTR1 and GSTR2A. Now both the things will be done as and when you report. In the beginning, we are going to do it at the end of the day. And it will be visible to you in your GSTR1 and in GSTR2A of your buyer. Now, this is a big improvement. As you all must have noticed recently, in fact, last month and this month, we have started providing PDF document of liability part of 3B based on your GSTR1 and ITC based on your supplier's GSTR1 in the form of 2B. Our aim is to create or auto draft your 3B after 2 months or so that it starts flowing in, and when you file your GSTR1, after that date, last date, your 2B will also be created and your 3B will be drafted, which of course you can edit and file. This is the next step. Once you have started filing electronic invoices, so everyday basis your GSTR1 will keep on populating. Now what is going to happen? Your GSTR1 will also get auto drafted for majority of tables except B2C and your advanced table. These two will not be updated, and that is what will have to be done later. Your question will be that why we are not putting B2C invoices, and the reason is that at this stage we want to concentrate first on smaller set of people, and that is why government has decided 48,000. The way we had done e-way bill, we want to start small and perfect it, and then we'll scale it fast. And after a certain time, when government decides that it's the right time, we will also introduce B2C so that your entire GSTR1 can also be created. So this is basically the basic flow, and you get it. Now, number of IRPs, currently we have started with one, which is run by NIC, same agency which has, our government agency, which has also done successfully our e-way bill. And we have also started the process of putting another one to ensure that there is 100% redundancy. Of course, government has approved 10 IRPs so that tomorrow, as if need be, we can put some more. Now, these are some of the things I thought I will talk about. Few more things. As I mentioned, why it has been done, we have already mentioned. What it means, there is lots of confusion still. People ask me. In fact, I was amazed when one of the consulting companies guys asked me, why don't you take scanned invoices? Now here, E-invoice is nothing but exchange of invoice document in a standard format with the government department as well as with your buyer. That is what it means. And it does not mean generation of invoice on a government portal. You are not going to generate invoice on IRP. It has to be generated in your own system. You're just reporting it. The 500 crore thing, of course, we will come to those question which has been sent. Initially, the way the notification is worded in a financial year. Now, the way GST works, we always go back to previous financial year, and that's how we had a GSTN that we had interpreted. But then later on, government told us that no, that's not the correct interpretation. Interpretation is any financial year starting from implementation of GST in the country, and this has been clarified by us. This FAQ was updated some time back. We have also put it on GST portal where all the taxpayers come, and for benefit of our convenience of taxpayers, we had generated based on 1920 data. However, it is the taxpayer who knows exactly what is his turnover at PAN level. So it is your duty to look at it, and then if you fall into that category and if your name is not there, please go to that portal, invoice portal, and we have made a window there. Just write your GST and make a request, and that your GST will be enabled for reporting. There is another case also. Suppose we have created this data or list of 48,000 based on data filed in GSTR 3B. In case you have some issue with that, and your claim is that my turnover is less than 500, that also you can go and inform there so that we can remove it. What I wanted to tell was that these things we have done for your convenience. The law mandates, and it is the responsibility of the taxpayer to comply with those. Then there are certain sectors government has exempted. These were told by Mr. Sriram. There was some confusion about whether like banking or any sector which has been approved here, if that entity is into working in this area as well as some areas which are not exempted. For example, bank here is exempted, but banking operations, but suppose they are also selling some other goods which are not exempted, will they be required to file or report electronic invoices? We have been recently told by the government, and in fact that clarification will come from the government, that it is for the entity. So all the banks, since they are engaged in banking, they are exempted, even if for those activities also which are non-banking. Similar will be the case with passenger transport services, etc. This clarification will be provided, but however, I'm just clarifying because this was raised by Mr. Sriram.
It is already in FAQ.
These are all you are aware of. So with these, what I'll do, I'll request my colleague, Mr. Ravi Kiran Idara, to take over from here and take us through some of the basic things and the FAQs, important additional new FAQs which we have put in last 1 week on the portal. Though we had shared with Siki yesterday the complete list of FAQs and other resources, and I'm sure you must have got it. However, if you have any question, please keep it right in the chat so that at the end we can take it up during Q&A. Over to you, Ravi.
Thank you, sir. Very good to all the participants. So my first posting was in Chennai for 6 years. So I'm very glad that many participants are from Chennai. And now I'm just going to share you.
ரொம்ப ஃபாஸ்டா சொல்றீங்க. 10:25
sure
கேட்டேன்.
See my screen.
இதுதான் இருந்தது. நான் 10:25 மீட்டிங் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்றதுக்கு முன்னாடி இப்பதான் நீங்க வந்து டென்ஷன்
So,
ஆவனீங்க.
Ravi, we can see that your voice is getting fading sometimes.
11ல இருந்து தான் டென்ஷன்
And
ஆவனீங்க.
you can just go through this
அதுக்கு
quickly.
முன்னாடி half an hour இருந்தது, அப்ப சொல்லல. இப்போ வந்து
So
ரெக்கார்ட்
it is already said that the presently the supplier is issuing the invoice directly to the buyer. Now in the e-invoicing scenario,
இல்ல எதுக்குன்ற
the supplier will first send the invoice in JSON format to the notified portal.
நீங்க அந்த
And the
லேப்டாப்ல இருந்து
notified
கேபிள் எடுத்து
portal
இந்த
will give
லேப்டாப்
back the
போட்டீங்களா?
signed invoice JSON along with
இல்ல முன்னாடி
IRN,
சொல்றேன்.
which is embedded in a QR code.
நெட்வொர்க்
Once this
ஆலன்னீங்களா?
is received by the supplier, then
அது இல்ல, இங்க
he will
இருந்து
issue
நான் லேப்டாப்ல தான ஃபர்ஸ்ட்
the
லேண்ட் கொடுத்திருந்தேன்.
e-invoice. E-invoice
laptop.
has no legal definition, but whatever invoice copy which was duly reported to the notified portal and which is
Aishwarya
having
left
the
the meeting.
QR code,
எல்லாருமே left
which in
ஆயிட்டே
turn
இருக்காங்க.
has the IRN, is generally referred as e-invoice.
பிரசிடென்ட்டும் லெஃப்ட்,
So now the
வினோசனமும் லெஃப்ட்.
supplier
என்னையா
issues this
கோவஸ்ட்
e-invoice to the
சதனி
buyer.
தச்சம்பரம் லெஃப்ட்.
You may please note that here e-invoice may not be in the present scenario. It may not be electronic also. Even if, for example, a supplier is giving a invoice in paper copy, PDF, email, whatever it is, it should have the mandatory QR code which contains IRN. So that is called e-invoice. Then we have to start from basics actually, because many are getting confused. The law, what it says, as per the newly inserted rule 48(4), it says that the notified class of registered persons, we have already seen who they are. They have to prepare invoice by uploading particulars as mentioned in INV01. And where they have to upload, it is on invoice registration portal. Presently it is one, tomorrow there will be many. And they have to obtain invoice reference number. And after following this e-invoicing process, they will issue the e-invoice in the usual way as they are doing now. Then two more important legal provisions is that the invoice issued by notified person, wherever the invoice is applied, it will issue in any other manner. So it is not an invoice at all. Forget about validity or not valid. It is not an invoice in the eyes of GST law. This is clearly mentioned. And where e-invoicing is applicable, issuing of invoice in duplicate, triplicate, it is presently there. But wherever this is applicable, e-invoicing is applicable, this is not at all required. So e-invoice is not about a soft copy or generation by a government portal. And to whom it is applicable, it is already told. And supplies and documents covered. See, it is invoices, credit notes and debit notes. So if anyone are issuing invoices and credit notes and debit notes under the GST law, the e-invoicing is applicable. And what are the supplies covered? B2B, that is supplies to the registered persons, supplies to SEZs, exports and deemed exports. B2C supplies are not covered now. And if you report, IRT will be rejecting it. Then the process we have already seen, it will continue. The tax will continue to create their invoices in their accounting systems, and they'll be reported to IRP, IRN and QR code you will get, and then the invoice can be issued to the receiver with QR code in the same way as it is being done now. A GST invoice, wherever e-invoicing is applicable, it will be valid only with a valid IRN. So this is one of the most frequently asked questions. Many people are feeling that I have to go to a website and I have to fill a kind of form and I will generate an invoice. But in e-invoice scenario, we are primarily talking about machine-to-machine exchange of data. It is between the supplier's accounting system and the IRP, the e-invoice portal. So the exchange of invoice data happens between machine to machine. But of course, tomorrow you may see that the e-invoicing may be extended to small taxpayers. When that happens, a web-based screen or even a mobile app where the small taxpayers can enter their details one by one and then report to the IRP and then generation of IRN, this also will be provided. But presently it is mainly through APIs. So, as CEO GSTN has told, the e-invoice ensures electronic exchange of invoices also. Presently, the schema is notified statutorily by way of INV01. So the beauty of this INV01 is that it has all the typical elements of a commercial invoice, catering to all businesses. And it is global also. It is based on the PEPAL standard, which is used very popularly used in across the world, and it's